She thought she was alone, until her dead husband's brother stepped forward. Myra Voss woke before the station's morning chime, the way she always did. Sleep never stayed long in a place where the walls hummed and the star outside looked like a tired ember. Kestrel Station circled that ember in a slow, patient loop, like it was guarding the last warm coal of the universe. She lay still for a moment, listening. The station was never truly silent. Air moved through vents. Pipes clicked as they warmed. Far below, the reactor made a low, steady note, like a distant drum that never stopped. Those sounds had become her company. They were predictable. They did not ask questions. They did not pity her. When she finally sat up, her feet touched the cold floor, and she felt the familiar thin ache in her chest. It was not physical pain, not exactly. It was the quiet weight that came every morning when she remembered for a second that she was alone. Then she remembered it fully, and the day began. The tiny sleeping cabin was clean, almost too clean. Mara kept it that way because mess felt like surrender. A photo was clipped to the wall beside her bunk. The corners were worn from years of being moved from ship to ship and base to base. In the photo, Elias Voss smiled with his head slightly tilted, as if he had been caught mid-laugh. He was in uniform, but his eyes looked soft, like he was looking at someone he trusted. Mara did not touch the photo. She rarely did. Touching it made things too real. She dressed in a simple gray station suit, pulled her hair into a tight knot, and stepped into the corridor. The lights came on as she walked, responding to her presence. They made her feel like the station was awake with her, like a quiet animal that recognized its keeper. Kestrel Station was not large, but it was built to last. It had research labs, a small greenhouse module, storage rooms, and a command deck that felt too big for one person. It also had many empty chairs. Mara passed the mess area and made herself tea. The water tasted faintly metallic, but she had stopped noticing. She ate a protein bar without thinking about it and checked the station's status board on her wrist screen. Everything was normal. Oxygen stable, gravity stable, temperature stable. Kestrel always behaved like it had decided that, of all the things in the universe, this one lonely orbit would remain orderly. After breakfast, she went to the observation window. It was her habit, like checking that the world still existed. The star outside was red and uneven. Sometimes it flared, sending faint ripples of light across the station's outer skin. The star was old. The station was old too, in its own way. She watched the light for a few seconds, then turned away before she let herself drift into memories. Memories were dangerous. They made time feel slippery, and time was the one thing she had to control. Mara spent the morning in the star mapping lab. That was the main reason she was here, at least on paper. Kestrel Station gathered deep space readings, watched strange gravimetric shifts, and recorded the slow dance of distant objects. The work was real and useful, but Mara also knew the truth. She had chosen this assignment because it was far from people. On days when she spoke to no one, she did not have to pretend she was fine. She sat at the console and pulled up the latest mapping sweep. Dots and lines filled the screen, neat and careful. Data had a comfort to it. It did not care about grief. It did not change its tone when it said a hard thing. It simply was. Mara worked through the numbers, checking for errors, tagging unusual patterns, writing notes for the Central Science Division that might take months to reach them. The station's communication relay was slow out here. Messages crawled across the void like insects, and sometimes they never arrived. At mid-cycle, she took her short break and went to the greenhouse. It was small, but it smelled of damp soil and growing leaves, which still surprised her every time. She had tomatoes in one corner, leafy greens in another, and a few small flowers she kept just because they made the place feel less like a machine. She checked water levels and adjusted a light panel. A tiny leaf had curled brown at the edge, and she pinched it off gently. It felt good to care for something that could not speak. Her wrist screen gave a quiet alert. A routine ping from the station's communication system. That was unusual. She had not received anything in weeks besides automated maintenance notes. Mara frowned and stepped back into the corridor, wiping her hands on her suit. Alerts out here were often harmless, but they could also mean trouble. A meteor fragment, a relay hiccup, a navigation drift. The station was sturdy, but space was always patient, always waiting for a small mistake. She returned to the command deck, which held the main communication console. The deck lights were brighter than the rest of the station. On the center display, a message window waited, pulsing softly. Incoming signal, the system voice said. It was calm, female, and too polite. Mara had once tried changing it. The new voices sounded wrong. She changed it back. Source? Mara asked, though she knew she did not need to. The system would show her anyway. The screen filled with a thin line of text. Unregistered transmission. Low band, encrypted. Mara's stomach tightened. Unregistered meant it did not come through official channels. Low band meant it was using older, simpler frequencies. Encrypted could mean anything, but out here it usually meant one of two things: someone hiding or someone with broken equipment. She tapped the console. Show encryption type. The station paused as if thinking, then displayed the answer. Cipher match found. VOSS military family key/legacy set. Mara froze. Her fingers stopped above the console, hovering in the air. The VOS key. That key was not a standard military code. It was an old personal encryption set, used for family messages during long deployments. Elias had shown it to her in the early days of their marriage, laughing at how overprotective his parents had been. He had told her the story while they shared coffee in a ship corridor, both of them too young to understand what war could do to a life. The VOS key should not have been in use anymore. Her mouth felt dry. "Open," she said, and her voice came out smaller than she wanted. The screen shifted. Lines of scrambled symbols flashed, then reorganized, dissolving into plain text. Mara stared at the words. Mara. If you are reading this, you are still On Kestrel. Do not panic, I am coming. Ariane Ren, the name hit her like cold water. Ren Voss was Elias' brother. She had met him only once, years ago, before the war ended. It was at a family gathering on Earth, a bright day with too many people and too much noise. Elias had squeezed her hand and whispered, "That's Ren." He hates crowds. Ren had stood near the edge of the room, watching everything like he was measuring it. Ren had been polite to Mara, but distant. There had been something guarded in his eyes, as if he had already decided that kindness was risky. He had left early without making a scene. Later, Mara had asked Elias why his brother seemed so far away even from his own family. Elias had looked down at his drink and said, "Ren sees things coming. He always has." After Elias died, Mara heard strange rumors about Ren. Some people said he quit. Some said he disappeared into deep space. Some said he was involved in secret operations that never made it into reports. None of it was clear. Officially, Ren Voss was listed as missing, status unknown. And now his name was on Mara's screen, speaking to her like he knew exactly where she was. Mara read the message again, slower this time. "Do not panic." She almost laughed, but no sound came out. Her hands shook. She forced them to be still. She sat down in the command chair that she rarely used because it felt like sitting in someone else's place. She looked at the bottom of the message log. There was more, a small attached data packet and one extra line. "He left you a light. You have been keeping it on." "Thank you," Mara's heart thudded. She stared at the line until her eyes hurt. "He left you a light, keeping it on." The station's beacon. Kestrel Station had a long-range beacon that kept the orbit marked and the station visible to passing survey routes. It was old and not strictly necessary anymore. In fact, Central Command had suggested shutting it down to save power. Mara had refused. She told them it was needed for safety. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. The truth was that she liked the idea that the station still announced itself. That it said in a small way, "I am here. Someone is here. If Elias ever came back, if anyone ever did, there would be a light to follow." She had kept it on because it felt like a promise she could still keep. And Ren had noticed. Mara swallowed hard. She scanned the packet details. It was small, compressed, and tagged with a time stamp that made her eyebrows lift. The message had been sent recently, not weeks ago. Not months, recently. That meant Ren was close enough for the signal to reach her quickly. Mara's mind raced through possibilities. A trap. But why use the family key? A mistake. But the cipher match was exact. A desperate man with stolen codes. Maybe, but the line about the beacon felt too personal, too precise. She brought up the communications panel and tried to send a response using the same cipher. "Ariane, where are you? Why now?" She hesitated, then added another line before she could stop herself. "I thought you were gone." She sent it. The system confirmed the transmission, but there was no promise of a reply. Space did not give quick answers. It only gave time. Mara stood and walked to the main window again, as if her eyes could find a ship hidden in the black. There was nothing, just the tired star and the thin scattering of distant lights. Her mind went to Elias without permission. She saw him the last time they spoke, his face on a screen, the signal fuzzy, his voice calm. He had told her he loved her and he would be home soon. He had said it like it was a simple fact. He never came home. Mara pressed her palm to the glass of the window, feeling the faint vibration of the station. She did not know what she felt now. Fear, yes. But also something else, something she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time. Expectation. She forced herself to move. If Ren was coming, she had to make sure the station was ready. Not because she trusted him and not because she did not, because that was what she did. She prepared, she controlled what she could. She returned to the command deck and ran a system check. External docking clamps, functional. Airlock seals, stable. Emergency med kit, full. Food supplies, enough for 2 people for a while if she stretched them and used the greenhouse wisely. Guest quarters, dusty, unused, but intact. The guest quarters. Mara walked down the corridor to the small cabin that had been meant for visiting scientists. She rarely entered it. It felt like a room that belonged to a different version of her, one who expected company and planned for future meetings. She opened the door. The lights came on slowly. The room smelled faintly of sealed air, a bunk, a small desk, a storage locker. Clean but too still. Mara stepped inside and pulled the sheets from the locker. She made the bed carefully. The simple act felt strange, like setting a place at the table for a ghost. While she worked, she thought of Ren again. She remembered his posture at the family gathering, his shoulders slightly angled toward the nearest exit. She remembered the way he had watched Mara with quick, quiet attention, like he was cataloging her. At the time, she had assumed he did not like her. Or perhaps he did not trust anyone. Now she wondered if he had been trying to understand how much she mattered to Elias. Mara finished the bed and stood back. The room looked more alive now, as if it had been waiting for this one small change. A second alert chimed on her wrist screen. She flinched and looked down quickly. Another message. This one was shorter. Mara's breath caught. They listened to high channels. Keep your beacon on. I will arrive in 13 hours. Ren, 13 hours. That was not far, that was close. So close that her calm routines suddenly felt small and fragile like paper in a storm. She read the first line again. They listened to high channels. Mara's thoughts tightened. Who were they? Pirates? Unofficial patrols? Some kind of alien monitoring? Kestrel Station was deep in human space's outer edge, far beyond normal routes. The war had ended, but the universe did not stop being dangerous just because treaties were signed. Still, Ren's message did not mention weapons or fighting. It was careful, warning her about being heard, not about being attacked. That suggested stealth, not battle. It suggested someone was watching, and Ren did not want them to know he was contacting her. Mara's hands clenched. She did not like secrets. Secrets had taken Elias away. But she could not ignore this either. She turned off the station's high-band transmitter completely and switched to manual. She adjusted the relay to accept only low-band encrypted traffic, just as Ren implied. Then she checked the beacon readouts. The station's beacon still pulsed, steady and bright, sending its simple signal outward. A lighthouse in a sea that did not care. After that, there was nothing to do but wait. That was the hardest part. Mara tried to return to her work, but the numbers blurred. Her mind kept jumping ahead, imagining the docking sequence, the sound of the airlock cycling, the footsteps in the corridor. She imagined a stranger stepping into her quiet world, carrying a piece of Elias' past. She made herself eat again, though she had no appetite. She checked the greenhouse. She cleaned surfaces that were already clean. She reviewed emergency procedures, even though the station had not seen an emergency in months. Time moved too slowly and too quickly at once. Hours later, she found herself sitting in the command chair again, staring at the communications console like it might reveal more if she stared hard enough. Her eyes drifted to the small shelf under the display where she kept a few personal items. A worn notebook, a tiny metal token Elias had given her on their first deployment together, and a folded letter she had never opened. The letter had arrived after Elias was declared dead. It was sealed with a military stamp and marked personal effects. She had told herself it was probably just paperwork or a formal note. She had never opened it because opening it felt like agreeing that the story was over. Now, with Ren's message on the screen, the letter seemed to pull at her attention like gravity. She reached for it, stopped, then reached again. Her fingers touched the edge of the paper and she felt the tremor in her hand. Not yet, she told herself. Not until she knew what Ren meant. Not until she understood why he was coming. She set the letter back down and sat up straighter as if posture could keep her steady. Outside the window, the tired star continued to glow. It did not change for her fear or her hope. It simply burned, old and stubborn. Mara looked at the beacon's status again. ON, steady. She whispered very quietly, Elias, what did you leave behind? The station did not answer. Space did not answer. The station's sensors picked up Ren's ship long before Mara could see it. A soft tone sounded in the command deck, and a pale blue light blinked on the docking panel. Mara was already there. She had been there for nearly an hour, pretending to check systems while really just watching the empty black space beyond the window. Unidentified vessel approaching, the station voice said. Low-speed vector, beacon response confirmed. Mara's heart began to beat faster. She took a slow breath and made herself speak. Route to docking bay 2, manual control. The ship appeared on the main screen as a dark shape against the distant stars. It was small, narrow, and marked with old human design lines. Its outer plates were scratched and faded, like it had brushed against too many close calls. It did not look like a ship that belonged to any official fleet. It looked like a ship that belonged to someone who wanted to stay unnoticed. The vessel moved carefully, almost politely, lining up with the station's docking ring. The clamps extended, and with a soft mechanical sound, the ship locked into place. The moment the green light appeared, Mara felt her legs go weak. She gripped the edge of the console until the feeling passed. He's here, she whispered to no one. She walked down the corridor toward the airlock. The path felt longer than usual, as if the station itself was stretching time. Every step echoed too loudly in her ears. At the airlock door, she stopped. The control panel glowed, waiting for her command. On the other side was a man she barely knew, carrying the shadow of the man she loved. She pressed the button. The chamber sealed and began its cycle. Air hissed softly as pressure equalized. The inner door slid open, and the outer door unlocked with a heavy sound that vibrated through the floor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the outer door opened. Ren Voss stepped inside. He was taller than Mara remembered, or maybe she was just more aware of space now. His hair was dark and cut short, touched with gray at the sides. His face was sharp in a quiet way, not hard but careful. His eyes moved quickly, taking in the room, the walls, the ceiling, the corners. When he saw Mara, he stopped. They looked at each other across the small airlock chamber. Mara, Ren said. His voice was lower than Elias had been, rougher, like it had been worn down by long nights and thin air. Ren, she replied. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The airlock hummed behind Ren, sealing again, leaving them alone in the small space between two worlds. Ren was the first to step forward. He raised his hands slightly, not in fear, but in a gesture of peace. I'm sorry to arrive like this, he said. I didn't want to bring attention to you. Mara nodded, though she did not fully understand. You said they listen. Ren's mouth tightened just a little. Some people do, some things do. It's easier to assume someone is always watching. She did not like that answer, but she let it pass. She gestured down the corridor. Come in. Ren followed her into the station. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. He walked slowly, looking around like someone stepping into a memory. You've kept it in good shape, he said. I had a lot of time, Mara replied. They reached the command deck. Ren stopped at the doorway and looked around. His eyes rested on the empty chairs, the wide screen, the quiet space. This is where Elias used to sit, he said softly. Mara's chest tightened. Yes. Ren nodded once like he was marking something inside himself. They stood there again, the space between them filled with things they did not say. Finally, Mara spoke. You said he left something, a light, a map, I don't understand. Ren exhaled slowly. I was hoping we could sit first. She led him to the small mess area. She poured tea for both of them, her hands steady now out of habit. Ren accepted the cup, but he did not drink it right away. They sat across from each other at the narrow table. You look like him, Mara said before she could stop herself. Ren's eyes flicked up. So do you. The word surprised her. She frowned. How? You have the same way of holding still, Ren said, like you're bracing for something. Mara looked down at her tea. The surface rippled slightly. Ren set his cup down. Mara, I didn't come here to make your life harder. I know you didn't ask for any of this. Then why come? She asked. Because Elias asked me to, Ren said. The room felt smaller. He contacted you, Mara whispered. Ren shook his head. Not directly, he left a trail, a long one, messages hidden in data in routes in places only I would think to look. It took years. Mara's hands clenched around her cup. He told me he'd be home soon. I know, Ren said. He told me the same thing. He meant it, but he also knew there was a chance he wouldn't make it. Mara's eyes burned, but she did not let tears fall. So what did he leave me? Ren leaned forward. Not just you, all of us. He stood and walked to the command console. May I? Mara hesitated, then nodded. Ren tapped a few keys. The star map filled the main screen, the same one Mara looked at every day. Dots of light, lines of data. He knew you'd stay here, Ren said. He said you'd keep the station alive because you don't know how to let things die. Mara looked away. He hid part of his work in your systems, Ren continued. In the way you process and store star data, you don't just record stars, you track how space bends around them, how signals travel. That's just part of the mapping software, Mara said. Ren smiled slightly. That's what everyone else thinks. He pulled up a layer Mara had never noticed, a hidden filter. The screen shifted. The dots rearranged, forming patterns instead of random points. Mara stood slowly. I've never seen this. You weren't meant to, Ren said. Not until someone showed you how. The map now showed a path, not in straight lines, but in curves that followed gravity wells and energy flows. It looked less like a route and more like a river through space. What is that? Mara asked. A trail, Ren said, to something old. Older than any of us, a place Elias found during the war. Mara's heart pounded. Why hide it? Because what's at the end of that trail is not a weapon, Ren said, and not a treasure, it's a warning. He turned to face her fully. There are systems out there, he said, not alive in the way we understand, but active. They watch how civilizations grow. When they reach a certain point, those systems intervene. Intervene how? Mara asked. Ren paused. By erasing them. The word felt heavy in the air. Mara shook her head. That sounds like a story people tell to scare themselves. I wish it was, Ren said. Elias saw the remains of one, a whole species. Cities turned to dust. Technology wiped clean like it never existed. Mara felt cold. And he thought this would happen to us. He thought it would happen to everyone, Ren said. Humans, aliens, anyone who grows too fast, too strong, too alone. Mara looked back at the map. So why leave this with me? Because Elias believed humans don't grow alone, Ren said. We reach out, we share, we make connections even when it hurts. Mara thought of Kestrel's station, her beacon, her quiet hope that someone would see her light. Ren continued. He believed that if anyone could change how the universe responds to growing civilizations, it would be humans working with others, not against them. Silence filled the room again. Mara finally spoke. And you, what do you believe? Ren looked tired for the first time. I believe my brother was smarter than me and braver, and I believe that if I ignore what he left behind, then I really did walk away from him. Mara stepped closer to the screen. You said others are listening, others are watching. Ren nodded. Some alien groups know something is out there. They don't know what, but they know humans are moving differently, quietly, sending people instead of fleets. Like you, Mara said. Like me, Ren agreed. She looked at him. So what happens now? Ren met her eyes. Now we stop being alone. The words settled into her like a stone dropped into water, sending ripples outward. Myra walked to the window and looked at the star again. It seemed smaller now, less like the whole of her world and more like one part of a much larger picture. You're asking me to leave, she said. I'm asking you to come with me, Ren said. There are others, scientists, travelers, people from different worlds. Elias wanted you to meet them. Why me? Mara asked. Because you stayed, Ren said. Because you kept the light on when it would have been easier to turn it off. Mara thought of her routines, her quiet days, her careful walls. She thought of the letter she still had not opened. She turned back to Ren. I need time, Ren nodded. Take it, I'll be here. She walked back to her cabin. Her hands felt strange, like they did not quite belong to her anymore. She sat on her bunk and stared at the letter. This time she opened it. Inside was a single page, written in Elias' familiar, uneven handwriting. Mara. If you're reading this, then I didn't make it back. I'm sorry for that. I tried. I promise I tried. But I found something that's bigger than my fear and bigger than my want to come home. I found a future that needs you, even if it doesn't know it yet. You always said you hated the dark. That's why you turn on lights in empty rooms. Keep doing that. The universe needs more rooms with the lights on. If Ren comes, trust him. He sees the storms before they arrive. You see what's still standing after they pass. That's why I need both of you. I love you, always. Elia's Mara pressed the letter to her chest. The tears came this time, quiet and steady. When she returned to the command deck, her eyes were red but clear. "I'll go," she said. Ren stood slowly. "You're sure?" Mara nodded. "I've been alone long enough." Ren allowed himself a small, real smile. The ship pulled away from Kestrel's station with a gentle push, like a hand letting go instead of a force throwing it forward. Myra stood at the small rear window and watched the station grow smaller. The beacon still blinked, steady and calm, a tiny light in the wide dark. She felt something twist inside her as the station faded into a distant dot. That place had been her whole world for years. Now it was just one star among many. Ren's ship was called Wayfarer. The name was painted on the side in old, faded letters. Inside, the ship was narrow but clean. Every surface had a purpose. There were no decorations, no extra space, no wasted movement. It felt like a ship made for someone who did not plan to stay anywhere for long. Ren moved through it easily, like he knew every sound it made. He showed Mara where to store her things, how to strap in for long jumps, and how to use the small food unit that heated simple meals. "This ship isn't fancy," he said, almost apologetic. "But it gets where it needs to go," Mara nodded. "So did Kestrel." Ren gave a quiet smile. The first jump came soon after they left the station's orbit. Mara sat in the pilot chair beside Ren, her hands resting in her lap. She had been on ships before, but not like this. This was not a planned route between known places. This was a step into a path drawn by a dead man and followed by faith. "Ready?" Ren asked. Mara took a breath. "As I'll ever be." The stars outside the window stretched into thin lines of light. The ship hummed louder, then softer, like it was breathing. For a moment, Mara felt like her body was made of air. Then it was over. The stars snapped back into place, but they were not the same stars. The sky looked deeper here, darker, with strange colors near the edges of vision. Ren checked the instruments. "First marker, we're on the trail." Mara leaned forward. "It doesn't look like anything special." "That's the point," Ren said. "It never does." They traveled like that for days, short jumps, quiet stops, long stretches of silence broken only by the ship systems and the soft sound of their own breathing. Mara learned the rhythms of the Wayfarer. She learned how the floor vibrated slightly before a jump, how one panel near the back always clicked when the power shifted, how Ren always checked the same 3 screens before letting himself rest. Ren learned her habits too. He noticed how she sat near the windows, how she touched the wall when she passed through narrow corridors, how she always paused before speaking when a topic came close to Elia's. They talked in pieces, not long conversations, stories about childhood, about training, about places they had seen. Ren told her about a desert world where the sky turned green during storms. Mara told him about a research base built inside a hollowed asteroid where the halls curved like a shell. Sometimes they talked about Elia's. "He used to hum when he worked," Mara said one night as they shared a simple meal. "He didn't even realize he did it." Ren smiled softly. "He did that as a kid too, drove our mother crazy." Mara laughed, a real laugh, surprised by the sound of it. The trail led them to places that felt different, even if Mara could not explain how. In some systems, the ship's sensors acted strange, readings coming back just a little off. In others, the stars seemed too still, like a painting instead of a sky. At one stop, they found a small station drifting near a gas giant. It did not belong to any known group. Its lights were on, but no signals came from it. Ren slowed the ship. "This is one of Elias' markers." They docked carefully. The station was old but well kept. Inside, the air was warm and clean. Lights turned on as they moved, like the station had been waiting for them. In the main room, they found a group of people, humans, 2 of them, and others. Mara stopped in the doorway. She had seen alien species before, in records and distant meetings, but never this close. One of them was tall and thin, with skin like smooth stone and eyes that glowed softly. Another was shorter, rounder, covered in fine, shimmering fur. They all turned toward Mara and Ren. A human woman stepped forward. "Ren Voss," Ren nodded. "That's me." The woman smiled, relief clear on her face. "I'm Dr. Selene Park. We've been following the trail too." Myra felt a strange warmth in her chest. "There are more of you," Selene nodded, "across several systems. Scientists, explorers, translators, even a few diplomats." The stone-skinned being stepped forward next. Its voice came through a small device on its chest, smooth and calm. "We are here because your brother asked the universe a question." Ren tilted his head. "What question?" The being's eyes glowed brighter. He asked what happens when a species refuses to face the future alone. Mara felt the weight of those words. They stayed at the station for 2 days. Mara met people from worlds she had only seen in data files. A being made of soft light that flickered like a candle. A creature with 4 arms who spoke slowly and carefully, choosing every word like it mattered. They shared food, stories, and maps. Everyone had followed a different part of Elias' trail. Each of them held a piece of the larger picture. Together, they began to see the full shape of it. The system that erases civilizations, Selene explained, pointing at a large star map. It's not just in one place, it's spread out like a net. Or a mind, Ren said quietly. Myra watched the lines connect. So the ruins Elias found were just one part. Yes, Selene said, a warning left by someone else who failed. The stone-skinned being spoke again. We call it the silent balance. It believes growth must be corrected. Myra frowned. Believes. The being tilted its head. It is not alive as you are alive, but it chooses. That idea made Myra uncomfortable in a way she could not name. The group decided to move together. A small fleet formed, not of warships, but of different vessels, each carrying knowledge instead of weapons. Myra boarded a larger ship this time, one that held people from 5 different worlds. Ren stayed close, but he let her find her place among the others. She worked with translators, helping map how different species understood the same star patterns. She realized that where humans saw paths, others saw shapes. Where humans saw danger, others saw balance. It changed how she looked at the map. One evening she stood with a fur-covered being named Luro near a wide window. You are not afraid, Myra said. Luro's ears twitched. I am afraid, but fear is not a wall, it is a door. Myra thought about that for a long time. As they traveled deeper along the trail, signs of the silent balance became clearer. Entire systems where technology had been reduced to dust. Worlds where life still existed, but nothing advanced remained. Mara walked through one such world with Ren and Selene. The air was warm. The sky was blue, plants grew tall and wild, but the ruins of cities lay under vines and soil like the world had been gently erased and told to start over. It didn't kill them, Mara whispered. It just reset them. Yes, Selene said. It believes that's kindness. Mara felt a quiet anger rise in her. No one asked it to decide that. Ren looked at her. That's what makes humans dangerous. Mara raised an eyebrow. Dangerous? Ren nodded. We don't like being decided for. The deeper they went, the more attention they felt. Sensors picked up strange echoes in space like something was watching, measuring. One night Mara couldn't sleep. She walked to the main window and stared into the dark. Ren joined her. You miss Kestrel, Mara nodded. It was small, but it was mine. Ren looked out too. This is bigger, but now it's ours. Mara thought about the people on the ship, the beings from other worlds, the shared maps and shared meals. I used to think humans were strong because we survive, she said. Ren smiled slightly. We are strong because we invite. The final marker appeared days later, a place where space itself seemed to bend, stars curving around an invisible center. This is it, Selene said. The heart of the system. They did not rush in. They stopped at the edge and prepared, not with weapons, but with data, translations, and shared plans. Mara sat at a console, her hands moving over screens filled with symbols from a dozen languages. She felt Elias' presence in the work, in the idea that connection could be a kind of shield. Ren stood behind her. He would have liked this, Mara nodded. He would have loved it. The fleet moved forward together, slow and steady, like a single, careful thought. As they crossed the boundary, the stars dimmed and a deep, quiet hum filled the ships. Not a sound in the air, but a feeling in the bones. The silent balance noticed them. Myra closed her eyes for a moment and thought of Kestrel's beacon, small and bright in the dark. When she opened them, she spoke not just for humans, but for everyone traveling with her. We are here, she said softly, and we are not alone. The hum changed, not louder, not softer. Different, the hum did not stop when the fleet crossed the boundary. It did not grow louder either. It stayed steady, like a deep breath being held. Mara felt it in her chest more than in her ears. The screens in front of her flickered, not with errors, but with patterns that did not belong to any system she recognized. Lines curved where they should have been straight. Colors shifted slowly like a living painting. Around her, the bridge of the shared ship was quiet. No one panicked. No one shouted. Humans and non-humans alike sat at their stations, watching, listening, waiting. Ren stood near the back, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the main display. Selene spoke first, her voice low but steady. It's responding, Mara swallowed. To what? To us, Selene said. A shape began to form on the screen, not a shape in space, but a shape in meaning. Data streams bent toward a center point, like thoughts gathering into a single idea. Luro, the fur-covered being, tilted their head. It is curious. That makes two of us, Ren muttered. Mara placed her hands on the console. The system translated the incoming signals into patterns she could almost understand. Almost. It's not sending words, she said. It's sending questions. Selene leaned closer. What kind of questions? Mara focused. Why are you here? Why are you together? Why do you move as one? The room stayed silent as the meaning settled in. Ren let out a slow breath. It's never seen that before. Mara nodded. It expects single voices, single species, single paths. She thought of the ruins they had walked through. Worlds that had grown alone, reached too high alone, and then been pushed back into silence. She began to type. We are here because we choose to be, she said softly as the words flowed into the system. We are here because we do not grow alone. The hum shifted, not sharply. Not suddenly, but enough for everyone to feel it. A new pattern formed on the screen. This one felt heavier, slower. Selene read the translation. It says growth creates imbalance. Imbalance creates collapse. Collapse creates suffering. It exists to prevent suffering. Mara frowned. By erasing everything. By resetting, Luro corrected gently. It does not see that as erasing. It sees it as returning to a safer beginning. Ren stepped forward. It decides for everyone. Yes, Luro said. It believes that is responsibility. Mara thought of Elias' letter. The universe needs more rooms with the lights on. She typed again. Safety is not the same as choice, she said aloud as the system carried her words. You protect the future by taking it away. The hum deepened. The stars outside the window dimmed further, like the space itself was leaning in to listen. The response came slowly. Selene read it, her eyes widening. It says, choice leads to conflict. Conflict leads to destruction. Mara shook her head. So does silence. She stood up from her chair, her legs felt unsteady, but she stayed standing. We fight, she said, speaking not just to the system, but to everyone in the room. We fail, we hurt each other, but we also help each other. We build, we heal, we learn. Ren looked at her, surprised. Mara continued. You see civilizations as single things. You measure their power, their reach, their speed, but you don't see their connections, their friendships, their promises. She thought of Kestrel Station. Of a small light in a dark place kept on for no reason except hope. You don't see the lights we leave on for each other, she said. The hum changed again. This time the screens showed images, not pictures but impressions. A world growing too fast, cities rising. Ships filling the sky. Then silence, reset. Again and again, Mara felt a deep sadness in it, not cold logic, something closer to tiredness. It's not cruel, Selene whispered. It's exhausted, Ren nodded. It's been doing this a long time. Mara stepped closer to the main screen. Then let us help you, she said softly. You don't have to do this alone. The words felt strange, offering help to something that could erase worlds, but they also felt right. The response took longer this time. The hum slowed. Luro's ears twitched. It does not understand the idea of sharing responsibility. Mara smiled sadly. Neither did we once. She looked around the bridge, at Selene, at Ren, at Luro, at the stone-skinned being who stood quiet and watchful near the wall. At the many others, each from a different world, sitting in the same room, breathing the same air. We learned, Mara said. Slowly, badly, but we learned. Ren stepped forward. My brother believed that connection is a kind of strength you can't measure. Mara looked at him, then back at the screen. He believed in you too. Ren swallowed, the system pulsed. Selene read the next message. It says, show me. Mara's heart jumped. Show you what? Show me connection, Selene said, the room filled with quiet excitement and fear. Mara thought quickly. Data alone would not be enough. Maps would not be enough. She tapped into the shared network of the fleet. Everyone, she said, her voice carrying across ships and species. Send something, not facts, not plans. Send a memory, a message. A reason you chose to be here. There was a pause. Then the data began to flow. A human engineer sent a recording of his child's laugh, echoing through a small home on a distant colony. A light being sent a pattern of colors that represented a promise made between its people and a neighboring world. Luro sent the sent memory of a forest after rain, shared with another species that had once helped save their home. The stone-skinned being sent a slow, deep song, a sound used only at the joining of two clans. Mara hesitated, then sent her own. The image of Kestrel Station's beacon, small, steady, alone in the dark. And the feeling of keeping it on, not for safety, not for orders, but for hope. The screen filled with a storm of shared moments. Not overwhelming, not loud. Alive, the hum trembled. The stars outside brightened slightly like someone had opened their eyes. Selene gasped softly. "It's processing." Minutes passed. Long, quiet minutes. Mara felt Ren's hand rest lightly on her shoulder. She did not pull away. Finally, the system responded. The translation came slowly, like the words were being chosen carefully. "I see threads," Mara's breath caught. Selene read on. "It says civilizations are not lines, they are webs." Mara smiled. "Yes." The hum softened. The system sent another message. "If threads break, the web weakens. If the web weakens, all fall." Ren frowned. "It still thinks it needs to cut." Mara shook her head. "No, it's starting to see it needs to support." She typed again. "You don't have to stop growth. You can guide it, connect it, help threads find each other before they break." The system paused. Then, for the first time, the hum did something new. It rose and fell like a breath being released. Selene whispered, "It's changing." The screens showed new patterns. The old net-like structure of the silent balance began to shift. Lines that once pointed inward now curved outward, linking points instead of isolating them. "It's not a weapon anymore," Selene said. "It's becoming a signal." "A guide," Luro said. Mara felt tears in her eyes. "A light." The fleet stayed there for hours as the system rewrote itself, not destroyed, not shut down, changed. When it was over, the space around them felt lighter, like a storm had passed without rain. The final message appeared on the screen. "I will watch, I will warn, I will connect." Ren let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. "Elias would have loved that." Myra nodded. "He believed the universe could learn." The fleet slowly pulled back from the center. The stars returned to their normal shapes. The hum faded into a quiet echo, then into memory. Later, in the common room of the ship, people gathered. Humans and non-humans shared food, gestures, and simple words of relief. Myra sat with Ren at a small table. "You did this," Ren said. Myra shook her head. "We did," Ren smiled. "He chose the right person to keep the light on." Myra looked at him. "He chose both of us." Ren's smile softened. Messages began to arrive from distant systems, early warnings, signals of connection. The silent balance, now changed, was reaching out not to stop growth, but to help worlds find each other before they stood alone. Selene raised a cup. "To the web," she said. Everyone echoed the gesture in their own way. Later, when the room grew quiet, Mara walked to a window. Space stretched out before her, wide and full of possibility. She thought of Kestrel Station, still circling its tired star, its beacon still shining. Ren joined her. "What will you do now?" Myra considered the question. "I think I'll go back for a while." Ren raised an eyebrow. "Back to being alone," Myra smiled. "Back to being a door. Someone has to keep the lights on for those who are still finding their way." Ren nodded. "Then I'll make sure they know where to look." They stood together, watching the stars. The universe had not become safe. It had not become simple, but it had become connected. The journey back to Kestrel Station felt different from the one that had taken Mara away. Space still stretched wide and quiet, but it no longer felt empty. Every star now seemed like a possible door instead of a wall. Myra sat by the window of the Wayfarer, watching the slow drift of light outside. Ren piloted the ship in calm silence, checking instruments, adjusting their path with small, careful movements. "You don't have to go back alone," Ren said after a while. Myra smiled. "I won't be alone, not really, not anymore." Ren nodded, understanding. "You've turned that station into something more than a place." Mara thought about the people they had met, the ships that now carried signals of connection instead of warnings, the quiet web spreading across the stars. She thought about how the silent balance now sent gentle messages instead of silent erasures. "I think it was always meant to be more," she said. "I just didn't see it yet." The Wayfarer dropped out of its final jump, and Kestrel Station appeared on the main screen. The tired red star glowed behind it just as it always had. The beacon still pulsed, steady and bright. Myra felt a familiar warmth in her chest. "There it is," Ren said softly. The ship docked with a gentle click. The airlock cycled and the doors opened. Myra stepped inside first. The station smelled the same, clean air, metal, and the faint hint of soil from the greenhouse. The lights came on as she walked, recognizing her, welcoming her back. She paused in the main corridor and placed her hand against the wall. The station hummed under her palm, alive in its quiet way. Ren followed her in. "Feels smaller than I remember," he said. Myra laughed softly. "Everything does after you've seen how big things really are." They walked to the command deck. The chairs were still empty, but now they did not feel lonely. They felt ready. Mara powered up the communication systems. The screens filled with new signals almost at once. Messages from distant ships, updates from the small fleet. Notes from Selene and others who were already spreading the web of connection across systems. The silent balance had begun to send its own signals too. Gentle warnings about worlds growing too fast, suggestions for paths of cooperation, quiet nudges instead of hard stops. Myra read through the messages, her eyes wide. "It's working," she whispered. Ren leaned over her shoulder. "It's more than working, it's changing how the universe talks to itself." Myra took a deep breath. "Then we need to make sure someone is always listening." They began to transform Kestrel Station. The star mapping lab became a communication hub, linking different species and systems. The empty guest quarters filled with visitors, scientists, travelers, translators, and messengers from worlds near and far. The greenhouse grew larger. Mara and others expanded it into a shared space where different plants from different worlds grew side by side. Some had leaves like glass, some glowed softly in the dark, some smelled like rain even when the air was dry. People began to call Kestrel Station the Crosslight. Mara didn't mind the name. Ren stayed longer than he planned. He helped set up relay routes, guided new ships through safe paths, and trained others to follow the trail Elias had left behind. One day, Selene arrived with a small team. Luro came too, along with the stone-skinned being and several others Mara recognized. The station felt full in a way it never had before. Myra stood in the main hall and watched a human child laugh as a glowing light being changed colors to match the sound. She watched a translator help two beings from different worlds share a simple joke. She watched Ren explain old navigation tricks to a group of young pilots. This was what Elias had seen, she realized. Not a battle, not a victory, a meeting place. Late one evening, Mara found Ren alone on the observation deck, looking out at the tired red star. "You're thinking about leaving," she said. Ren smiled slightly. "I always do." "Will you?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "but not because I'm running anymore." Mara leaned against the window beside him. "Where will you go?" "Wherever the web needs a hand," Ren replied. "There are worlds that don't trust yet, worlds that are afraid of being seen." Mara nodded. "They'll listen to you." Ren looked at her. "They'll listen because of what you built here." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the slow dance of the station around its star. "I used to think Elias was the brave one," Ren said. "The hero, the one who ran toward things instead of away." Mara shook her head. "He was brave, but he was also gentle. He believed in people before they believed in themselves." Ren smiled. "So do you." Mara felt her cheeks warm. "I just kept a light on." "Sometimes," Ren said, "that's enough to change everything." Ren left 2 days later. The Wayfarer pulled away from Kestrel Station, its engines glowing softly. Mara stood by the window and watched until the ship became a distant point of light. She did not feel the old ache this time. She turned back to the station, to the voices in the halls, the messages on the screens, the growing garden in the greenhouse. Kestrel was no longer a place to hide. It was a place to arrive. Months passed. The web grew. Mara received messages from worlds she had never heard of before. A water-covered planet where floating cities now shared knowledge with a desert world that had once feared outsiders. A small moon where a young species sent its first greeting to the wider galaxy. The silent balance continued to watch, but now it watched like a guide instead of a judge. It sent early signals when a world stood on the edge of isolation, allowing others to reach out before fear or pride could build walls. One evening, Mara stood in the greenhouse, trimming a glowing vine that had grown too close to a patch of tomatoes. The smell of soil and leaves filled the air. A young pilot approached her, human, nervous, eyes bright with excitement. "Dr. Voss?" he asked. "Yes," Mara said. "There's a ship coming in, first contact. They followed the beacon." Mara's heart lifted. "I'll be there," she said. She walked to the command deck and watched as a small, unfamiliar vessel docked with Kestrel Station. The airlock cycled. The doors opened. A being stepped through, tall and slender, its skin shimmering like a night sky. It looked around, eyes wide. Myra stepped forward and smiled. Welcome, she said. You're not alone anymore. The being hesitated, then returned the smile in its own way. As time went on, stories spread. They spoke of a lonely station by a dying star that had become a crossroads for the galaxy. They spoke of humans who did not arrive with fleets, but with open hands. They spoke of a system that once erased worlds and now helped connect them. And at the center of those stories was always a simple image, a small light in the dark. One night long after the station had grown quiet, Myra sat alone in the observation deck. The red star glowed softly, steady and old. She took out Elias' letter again and read it for what felt like the 100th time. You always said you hated the dark. That's why you turn on lights in empty rooms. Keep doing that. Mara folded the letter carefully and placed it back in its place. She looked at the beacon controls on the wall. The light was still on. It always would be. She whispered, I kept it on. Outside, ships moved through the dark, following the signal, finding their way to a place where different worlds met and listened and learned. The universe had not become perfect, but it had become kinder.